In the middle of the night, I sneaked into William's room, and with red eyes, he told me to get out. Later, I brought my boyfriend home, and he cornered me against the wall and kissed me. Marry him? He scowled. I nodded. Rose, don't even think about it. I knew he was serious this time. When I was 13, a strange woman came to our house. She paid $300,000 to buy me from my drunkard father and told me she was my mother, now wanting to take me away to live a good life. I almost instantly agreed without thinking. I just wanted to escape that kind of life. Besides, it was my dad who didn't want me in the first place. William was her new husband's son, 10 years older than me. At our first meeting, following my mom's instructions, I politely called him brother. He gave me a scornful look and said, "Where did this filthy little brat come from?" From then on, I knew that William hated me, and he hated me a lot. But it didn't matter, I didn't like him either. William had his own house outside and rarely returned to the Addams family. We barely saw each other and passed 2 years without incidents. The turning point came in the 3rd year. My mom and William's father were in a fatal car accident on their way to the airport. Overnight, I became an orphan with no one to look after me. Several unfamiliar relatives saw an opportunity in the Addams family inheritance and all wanted a piece of it. It was then that William returned, not even giving my dad's body time to cool down. What's the hurry? He lounged lazily, his arm draped over the back of the sofa. William. You can't say that. What else can I say? My dad's dead, and I'm still here, right, Uncle Two? Addams' family isn't going to fall apart. With just these few words, he brushed off the relatives from Addams' family. Stop crying, little devil. His tone turned harsh as he looked down at me, eyebrows furrowing deeper. I cried louder. My drunkard father had been an unlucky person and passed away from a stroke due to alcoholism just 3 months after I came to the Addams family. And now, with my mother gone too, I was truly alone. William must have been annoyed by my wails and pulled out a cigarette but then stuffed it back. Come here, little devil. He scowled fiercely. I dare not go over there. What about you? Can you hear me? He repeated impatiently. I can't afford to offend him right now. I slowly moved over. Are you a snail? I quickened my pace a bit and stopped 3 steps away from him. Do I have a bomb strapped to me or something? I shook my head. Then why are you standing so far away from me? Can't you understand the word come here? I took 2 more steps, bowing my head and waiting for his next command. Suddenly, a pair of large hands landed on my head without warning. Kid, from now on, you can only hang out with me. To be honest, if I had known that hanging out with William would result in becoming a free babysitter, I might have just run away without looking back. After taking care of my mother and his father's funeral, William sold the original villa. His reason was that no one was living in it, and it was a waste to keep it empty. So, where are we going to live? There are plenty of places. He took me to where he lived. I seriously doubted that he sold the house simply because he was too lazy to move. Where will I live? I held a small suitcase in my hand and carried a bag of things that didn't belong to me on my back. Turn left on the 2nd floor, 3rd room on the left. He pointed casually. I didn't bring much with me, so I quickly unpacked and went back downstairs. William was lying on the sofa, already asleep. Where should I put your things? I asked him. In the room on your left. He was so tired that he didn't even want to open his eyes. I pushed open the door and was startled by the room's decoration. The bed was covered with pink sheets and pillowcases. I didn't expect this guy to have such a taste. But it wasn't my business, so I just put down the things he asked me to bring. Kid. I heard him shout from downstairs. I have a name. Oh, what is it? He yawned and didn't look at me. Rose. Okay, kid, can you cook? He looked at me, still calling me a kid. No, I can't. I pretended to be stubborn. He wasn't angry, instead, he looked me up and down. All right, then you'll learn. With that, he tossed me a phone and dozed off. Thanks to William, I finally learned to be self-sufficient when I was 16. William's job was very demanding, and sometimes I wouldn't see him for a week. William, are you free this Friday? No hesitation, just call me brother. He bent his index finger like a bow and tapped my head. I covered my head that was tapped. Ouch, that hurts. He glanced at me. Coldly chuckled, don't pretend with me, just say what you need. I put on a fake smile and said, brother, come to my parent-teacher meeting. William probably didn't expect me to be so obedient and switched to calling him brother this time. After all, in the past few years, except for the first time I called him brother when we first met, I mostly called him by his full name directly. He choked on the hot soup, face turning red, when I knew this was a sign that he was going to agree. This Friday at 3 p.m. he casually wiped his mouth and continued to drink his soup. Is that okay? He didn't even lift his head. Say one more thing and I won't go. On Friday afternoon, I waited for a long time at the school gate and finally saw William's flashy black Cayenne. I stomped my foot anxiously. Why are you so late? The parent-teacher meeting is about to start. William still leisurely adjusted his tie. You know nothing, it's not good to arrive too early. Besides, I'm here to give you face, and you're still picky. He bent down to meet my eyes. I didn't argue back, just walked ahead, occasionally looking back to see William still behaving like a lord, and would glance left and right now and then, enjoying the attention from passing female students. When we reached the classroom, the homeroom teacher was at the door getting ready to check attendance. Rose, have your parents arrived yet? They're here, at the back. I pointed to William, the one in the black suit. He's my younger uncle. The homeroom teacher clearly didn't believe, but still wrote it down upon my insistence. Throughout the meeting, William sat next to me, staring at the blackboard, giving the impression that he was deeply concerned about my growth. But I can assure you, this guy was just spacing out. As the meeting was about to end, I quietly tugged at William's sleeve. What's up? His voice sounded a bit hoarse, as if he had just woken up. Rush to leave later, come with me to the homeroom teacher's office. William raised an eyebrow. Are you in trouble? I sighed, looking to the sky. You'll know if you come with me. In the office, William sat across from the homeroom teacher, while I stood by, not daring to move. William held my final exam results. Math, 57. English, 76. Physics, well. 24. Kid, you did quite well. His tone was sarcastic. Each time William read out a subject, my arm twitched. Young Uncle Rose, don't be angry. Rose just didn't perform well this time. With more effort, she might still be able to get into a vocational school. William's lips twitched, and a dagger-like glare was directed at me. Young Uncle, I closed my eyes, regretting playing a prank on him earlier. In the end, William picked me up by the back of my collar and threw me into the car like a little chick. William, no, brother, listen to me explain. With a bang, William closed the car door and crossed his arms. Okay, explain, I'm listening. Speak up. You're pretty good at calling, right? And those subjects, to score that low, I really admire you. You're going to drive me crazy one of these days. See who else puts up with you. His face was stern and intimidating. I couldn't help but burst into tears as if tears were free. Why are you crying again? He helplessly pinched his brow. Brother, I'm sorry. I threw myself into his arms, crying uncontrollably and struggling to speak between sobs. William couldn't bear seeing me like this, reached out and patted my back, saying, stop crying, just do better next time, don't embarrass me again. I shook my head. I'm not crying because of that, he asked. I nodded, my tears soaking his black suit. Then let me guess what it is about, his tone sounding like he was coaxing a child. Is it because I said if I died, no one would take care of you? My crying intensified. William suddenly laughed. It seems like that's the reason. Dex, everyone has to die. I looked up, my eyes red-rimmed. You won't die, William, you won't die. Fine, I'll go along with you. He crossed his hands behind his head, no longer looking at me. After a while, he suddenly opened his eyes. Kid, I'm telling you this isn't over yet. I was speechless, looking at him in confusion. Go home and make up the missed lessons. I shook my head as if I were a drum. I knew it was futile to throw tantrums at someone like William, so I prepared to reason with him. I'm starting my senior year soon. I have to attend evening self-study sessions. I don't have time for makeup sessions. William seemed to have anticipated my response. No problem, I'll personally help you make up. Won't delay your evenings. True to his word. William not only took on the task of helping me make up lessons, but also started picking me up from school every day directly from the office. Previously, I wouldn't see him for more than a week, and now, he would be at home for 6.5 days of the week. Rose, William finally couldn't contain himself as I started nodding off for the third time, pressing his temples frantically, as if he would pass out from anger the next moment. Sorry, please continue. I startled awake, hastily wiping my mouth. 8th question, do it for me. William slammed the pen down, staring fiercely at my paper. Don't look at me like that, you're making me forget everything. I looked at him nervously. If you put on a golden face, I'll look at you like that. Stop fooling around, do it. I just went over a similar question with you last week. If you don't finish, no dinner, William remarked. I started frantically trying to remember the questions from last week, but my mind was blank. William looked at me incredulously. Don't tell me you forgot, Rose. I might actually kill someone. I broke out in a cold sweat. William's expression was too terrifying. I will. William, please calm down and put the knife down. I nervously began to work on the question. Perhaps people really don't know how talented they are until they are pushed to their limits. William. I've done it. I waved the answer sheet in his face. He deftly dodged. Whatever, stop boasting. I've taught you this 800 times, you should have gotten it right sooner. Why are you laughing then? I looked at him. William reined in his almost ear-to-ear grin. Mind your own business. William, I answered the question correctly, aren't you happy? I teased, poking his side. Quit fidgeting around, you brat. He knocked off my hand that was causing trouble, gave me a fierce look, and said, if you don't rank in the top 300 in the midterm exam this time, see how I'll punish you. I got it. You talk too much, be careful not to find a wife in the future. I replied casually to him. Ouch! It hurts. I covered the leg where William had just kicked me. Ungrateful little rascal. Not at all. If you can't find a wife, do you want me to take care of you in your old age? I glared at him. And should I be taking care of you after raising you for so many years? He shot me a sidelong glance. But you should get married too. You're 27 already. If you don't start dating soon, you'll turn into an old man, and no one will want you. He closed his eyes and remained silent. William, when are you going to find a sister-in-law for me? I shook his arm. Forget it in this lifetime. What, little rascal, bother me in my sleep again and I'll make you solve 100 conic curve problems when I wake up. I raised my fist at the empty air above him. Stinky William, the mentality of an old man is twisted, bullying kids. If you want to scold me, scold loudly, holding it in will only make it harder to do the questions. I lowered my head and ignored him. By mealtime, there was still no sign of William waking up. William! I poked him. What are you doing? Finished the questions? He didn't even lift his eyelids, just swatted away my hand. You always make me do the questions, it's already so late, I'm starving. William paused, picked up his phone, and indeed it was time to eat. Then why are you waiting instead of cooking? He glanced at me, expressionless. I shrugged, pretending, sorry, we're out of ingredients at home. Fine, since you've been doing well lately, I'll take you out to eat. I couldn't believe my ears. William, the stingy guy, actually offered to treat me. Are you serious? I exclaimed, jumping up from the sofa. Yeah, what do you want to eat? Hot pot, and make it spicy. That's good enough, don't act like I've never fed you before. He rolled his eyes at me. As if. I muttered under my breath. What did you say? William's ears perked up. Nothing. I silently prayed to bless the kind soul like you with a lifetime of peace. He looked at me as if I were a silly dog. But thankfully, this time William acted like a human and didn't deceive me. I devoured the meal hungrily. You seem to have forgotten everything I taught you. Eat with manners. William sat across from me, looking disgusted. My mouth stuffed with spicy beef. I couldn't retort. William didn't bother scolding me further. He put down his chopsticks after a few bites and started playing with his phone. Aren't you going to finish that? I asked him. Nod. I furrowed my brows firmly. Something is not right. William raised his eyebrows, looking somewhat amused. You're not trying to snatch my food, that's too strange. I left my chopsticks on the plate, pondering in my mind the possibility of William poisoning me. A wry smile tugged at the corner of William's mouth as he said, when have I ever snatched your food? When haven't you snatched my food? I retorted. Even when I was just learning to cook, William would devour all the dishes as if he hadn't eaten in centuries. I had to take the money he gave me and buy food to avoid going hungry to school. Waiter, the bill please. William turned his head away. Hey, I haven't finished eating yet. Why are you asking for the bill? You look like you're already full. He scanned the QR code, then walked out without a second glance. Under the surprised look of the waiter, I quickly stuffed a few more pieces of spicy beef into my mouth and hurriedly followed him outside. Say what you will, this rotten guy William might just leave without caring about me. I could only follow him in silence. That night, my dreams were filled with tripe and tender beef slices coming after me. Like all adolescent girls in their flowering youth, I fell in love, or more accurately, had a crush. The boy was the math representative of our class, named John. He possessed all the qualities that girls of my age admired: clean, neat, good at studies. The most crucial one was his good temper, always speaking gently, unlike William, who seemed to be exploding with anger all the time. Rose, can I ask you a question? I glanced at the problem, something that William had taught before, not too difficult. As I looked up, I noticed John's ears turning slightly red. I cleared my throat and explained it to him according to the approach William had taught me. Rose, you're really amazing. I've never seen this approach before. His eyes sparkled, and when he looked at me, there was only me in his gaze. Feeling a bit embarrassed, I awkwardly scratched the back of my head. It's nothing, you're amazing too. I've noticed that your grades in all subjects have been improving rapidly lately. Do you have a secret formula? I waved my hand. It's nothing special. Remembering how William had suppressed me during this time, I felt like crying without tears. Good grades? Bought with my life. Can you show me your notes? I'm weak in this section, he asked somewhat shyly. Not daring to waste a moment, I quickly handed him the notes that William had summarized for me. From then on, my relationship with John became more familiar, to the point where rumors started circulating in the class about the two of us. Rose, are you and John really together? My face turned red. Don't talk nonsense, we're just good friends. My desk mate shot me a disbelieving look. Rose, the class beauty, appeared beside me at some point, softly calling my name. Normally, she would just ignore me when she saw me, so it was the first time she had actually said my name. I tried to ignore the goosebumps on my arms and looked at her, asking, "What's up?" It wasn't a big deal, she just, could I step outside with her for a moment? Although it could have been said in one sentence, she had to add a few filler words, and her face was slightly flushed with awkwardness. People around us began to look over. I reluctantly agreed. Can you tell me now? She asked hesitantly, fiddling with her fingers. I wanted to ask you, does your younger uncle have a girlfriend? It took me 3 seconds to realize she was referring to William. I kept overturning assumptions in my mind. She blushed even more, burying her head lower. If he doesn't, can I have his contact information? My suspicions were confirmed, but I couldn't quite articulate the discomfort I felt. Rose? She looked at me, her eyes searching. For some reason, almost instinctually. I refused her. He's already with someone he likes, sorry. I have something to do, I'll go first. I spent the rest of the afternoon feeling gloomy, and John noticed, casually asking, Rose, are you feeling unwell? I shook my head. It's nothing. Why is your face so red? Are you running a fever? John said as he reached out to feel my forehead. I instinctively took a step back, and then I heard a familiar voice behind me. Brat. Turning around, I saw William standing 10 steps away from me. Come here, he commanded with a stern expression. Just as I was about to lift my foot, John grabbed my wrist. He looked warily at William and asked, Rose, do you know him? I suddenly remembered that John had been absent during the parent-teacher meeting, so he had not met William yet. William, who had inexplicably dyed his hair white recently and did not look like a good person, caught me off guard. Before I could explain, my wrist was grabbed by another large hand, emanating heat. Without waiting for me to speak, William quickly took my hand and started walking back. Once we got to the car, he crossed his arms, looking serious. I sneakily glanced at him. William had very fair skin, perhaps that was why his pupils were light in color, while his eyebrows were thick and nicely shaped, arching slightly upwards at the bridge of his nose, framing thin lips tinted with a hint of pink. Have you seen enough? The driver, who had been focused on driving, suddenly turned his head. I didn't have time to avert my gaze, and our eyes locked. My heart raced, my eyes felt hot. William's lips were moving. But I couldn't hear anything. Rose. I faintly heard him call my name before closing my eyes. Do you know what it feels like to have your heart race? Jill had once asked me. Well, I think I know now. Woke up? William's voice was hoarse, and his hair was messy. It was the first time I had seen him in such a disheveled state. In the past, I would have jumped up to laugh at his sloppiness. But now my attention only allowed me to focus on his hand resting on my forehead. Our skin touching, I could clearly feel his palm's ridges. The corners of my eyes burned as my cheeks turned red uncontrollably. Afraid that William would notice my peculiarity with further contact, I quickly withdrew. His hand remained in the same position, suspended in the air, then slowly lowered. Hungry? He asked me. A little. I tried to make my voice sound as normal as possible. It wasn't until he walked out that I could breathe. At this moment, I had to admit a fact that loomed before me. I seemed to have developed feelings for William. Not long after, William came in carrying a bowl of white porridge. Open your mouth. He scooped up a spoonful of porridge and was about to bring it to my mouth. No, it's okay, I can do it myself. He didn't speak, just stared straight at me, with no intention of backing down, and I stopped insisting, letting him feed me. What's with the low blood sugar, haven't you eaten? I grunted. I couldn't admit I had fainted because I was infatuated with him. I ate the porridge slowly, and William blew on every spoonful, as if trying to delay deliberately, like coaxing a child. What's the deal with that kid? He finally asked the question. I wanted to deny it. But then imagined what his reaction would be if he knew I had a crush on him. Do you like him? He flipped the spoon and glanced at me. I neither admitted nor denied. Speak. He put the bowl on the bedside table, his expression serious. Don't like him anymore. Knowing William's temper, if I didn't speak up, he might tear me apart later. When the words came out, his expression didn't soften. Don't like him anymore? He leaned back on the chair, arms crossed, with a posture that seemed to interrogate a criminal. I cautiously observed William's expression. How long? What? I didn't understand. How long have you two been together? He repeated. I shook my head. We've never been together. That's the truth. So, Rose, are you telling me that you've always liked him one-sidedly? He stared at me intently, not missing any of my words. Yes. William took out a cigarette, thought for a moment, and then put it back into his pocket. You can smoke, I don't mind. He gave me a fierce look. That kid dares to smoke in front of you? I remained silent and bowed my head. Eventually, he didn't light the cigarette either. After what seemed like a long time, William spoke up again. Kid, listen. I looked up at him, unsure of what he was going to say to me. It's not the time for puppy love now. He sat up straight, looking serious. I know, I replied. He paused for a moment and then said, you know nothing. Don't complain about my nagging. Even I find it annoying to listen to, but it's my duty. I had never seen William like this before. In my eyes, he never cared about anything. Such a carefree person. Even when our father passed away, he had an indifferent expression. But now, he was telling me so seriously that I was his duty. What duty? He turned his face away from me. To make sure you get into college. Then what? I can't control anything else, he said with a harsh tone. What a way to not be able to control. You definitely can't control. I retorted. William's face visibly darkened. In the following days, the relationship between William and I took a sharp turn downward. Although he still tutored me as usual, we both knew that something had changed between us. Everything ready? During breakfast, William looked down at the newspaper. If it wasn't just the two of us in the living room, I wouldn't have thought he was asking me. I replied. He put down the newspaper and glanced at my bulging school bag beside me. Admission ticket, ID card, 2B pencil, all ready? I replied curtly, cutting off his nagging. Rose, he no longer called me kid, but my name, Rose. William seemed a bit helpless. Today is your college entrance exam, not mine. There's no need for you to stay mad at me. I'm not. I focused my gaze on the tableware in front of me, giving him no attention. William dropped me off at the examination center and patted my shoulder like a father. Stay calm and do well in the exam. Afterward, we'll celebrate your birthday at home. He smiled, as if we didn't just have a disagreement moments ago. All right. I promise him. This is the first time we've had a calm conversation in nearly a year. Most of the test questions I've seen before. So it wasn't too difficult. Perhaps it's because of what William said yesterday morning that I even managed to come up with some ideas for the derivative, which I normally wouldn't be able to do. Rose, are you waiting for your little uncle? After the last exam, John somehow stood beside me without me noticing. I casually replied. I didn't explain to John about my relationship with William. Suddenly, my phone screen lit up. Monster, something came up at work. I can't come pick you up. take a cab home. Also attached was $1,000. That familiar William style. I rolled my eyes, turned to John and said goodbye. Sorry John, something came up at home, I have to leave. Rose. He called out to me, causing people around us to start looking our way. What's up? I turned back. Do you like him? I knew exactly who he was referring to. I nodded slightly. Seeing my expression, John sighed bitterly. I understand, I wish you happiness. I smiled back at him. You too. Back home, it was pitch black inside. William hadn't returned yet. I cursed William in my heart. It was clearly him who was supposed to celebrate my birthday with me, yet he hadn't shown up. The next moment, as I pushed open the door, a huge pink panther appeared in front of me. Ah! The pink panther suddenly exclaimed, the voice frustratingly familiar. Darn it. William, what's gotten into you? You scared me. I covered my heart and glared at him through the thick plush costume. Rose. Who taught you to curse at people like that? I was speechless. Of all things, that's where his attention was. Come out first. I said half mockingly, half threateningly. Oh damn, if I could get out earlier, I would have. How do I get out now? I tiptoed and removed the headgear from his head. William's face suddenly revealed itself to me. Sweat was dripping from his forehead, his once stylish hair now limp against his forehead, like an inexperienced child. Brat, if you laugh at me again, I'll throw you out. He said with a stern face, realizing how funny he must look. I didn't laugh, which I saw me laughing. William stopped arguing with me, produced a cake from nowhere, 3 candles on top, and below the candles, written in a crooked blueberry jam, were 5 words, wishing my little brat. Hey, William, don't tell me you made this cake. I pointed at the thing that could barely pass for a cake. His expression was a bit awkward, but he didn't try to hide it. What's wrong with the cake I made? I suspect you poisoned it. He pretended to take the cake away. Hey, why take it away? I stopped him. I made it for the dog. I was wrong, I was really wrong, bro, but what does the ellipsis mean? I tried to divert his attention. William was not embarrassed at all and straightforwardly admitted, not enough space. I frowned, this guy really has no manners. With one word of his, it could take up 2 acres of land. What kind of cake does he need to write that? What was it originally supposed to say? I asked him patiently. Happy birthday, what else could it be? Well, I shouldn't have expected to hear anything heartwarming from William's foul mouth. All right, blow the candles. Where's my happy birthday song? I squinted at him. Why sing that thing? He pouted, reluctant. Under my stern gaze, he finally relented. Fine, I'll sing, all right, happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday to my chingy, happy birthday to you. How's that, can you make a wish now? He asked, winking at me as if seeking praise. Half a minute later, he asked me, what wish did you make? I won't tell you, it won't come true once spoken. Pretty superstitious, huh? He glanced at me. Then he grabbed his clothes and headed for the shower, muttering as he walked, damn, I'm never wearing these stupid clothes again. I watched his thinning figure and thought of the wish I made for my 18th birthday, may all be well. After the college entrance exam results were out, I enrolled in a local university. William even asked me about it. Why not travel while in university? I half-jokingly said what was on my mind. Didn't you ask me to take care of you till the end? Who will look after you when I'm gone? William couldn't hide his smile, but still awkwardly retorted, who asked for your care? The late-night talks in the female dormitory at the university were the most intriguing. Rose, do you have someone you like? The dorm monitor, wiping her tears after a recent breakup, was very curious about her roommate's love life. Yes. I nodded without hesitation. Is it the cute guy who brought you the other day? Then why don't you take the initiative? What if the cute guy leaves? She excitedly patted the bed railing. Leaves? Yeah, you're so clueless. If you don't grab him now, what will you do when you find someone else? Don't cry, okay? She indignantly complained about how her ex-boyfriend had let her down. No, I believe William won't. I hadn't imagined that the words of the dorm monitor at the time would come true. After graduating from university, William came to pick me up but didn't take me home. Where are we going? You'll see when we get there. He nonchalantly answered my question. William, is this your sister? She's so pretty. Who is she? I asked, looking at the woman sitting next to William. Hello, sister, William hasn't told you yet, I'm his girlfriend, Ashley. the woman reached out, her fair and slender fingers agilely grasping my hand, as if I were her long-lost sister. I was absent-minded throughout that meal. I couldn't hear what Ashley was saying to William or to me. But her lips always carried a gentle and tender smile. After Ashley left, William and I returned home. Are you serious about her? I stood at the door, stopping in my tracks. As you can see, in the middle of the night, I sneaked into William's room. His beddings had been changed to a monotonous black and white at some point, which matched his demeanor a bit more. What are you doing here? He had just finished showering, with a slight mist around him. Talk. His tone sounded like he was scolding a child. I'm 22. I just sat on his bed like that, watching his hair still wet on his forehead. I'm 32. I know. You know what? There was fire in his eyes. William, I like you, don't tell me you don't know. I'm not playing dumb with him anymore. The next second, his eyes started to redden at the corners, as if trying hard to restrain something. Get out. What? I didn't understand. Get out. He grabbed my arm and pushed me out without a hint of hesitation. Rose? After 4 years and the dim lighting in the bar, I didn't immediately recognize the person who approached me as John. You're here, drowning your sorrows? He glanced at the drink in my hand, hesitated for a moment, and chose a more refined term. I gave a bitter smile, took a sip, and tilted my head back, something like that. Can I guess why? He sat down next to me. Because of your uncle? I started to wonder if John's major in college was fortune-telling. Don't look at me like that, it's written all over your face. He chuckled. I smirked without saying a word. Do you need any help? When I got back home, it was noon the next day. William was lying on the couch, still wearing yesterday's pajamas. Hearing the door open, he quickly turned his head. Rose. The next moment, seeing John's face, his expression turned as cold as ice. What is he doing here? William looked at me. Hello, I'm Rose's boyfriend, you can call me John. William glanced at the hand John extended, gave a disdainful laugh, and didn't shake it. John wasn't offended, he just smiled and retracted his hand. When did this relationship start? He was still just looking at me. Confirmed last night. Bringing him home so soon? He lowered his head, staring at the interlocked fingers of me and John. Not too soon, we're planning to get married. He stared at me, trying to find a hint of playfulness on my face. Me and Rose, shut up. William rudely interrupted John, his eyes reddening at the corners. It was then that I noticed the bruising under his eyes, as if he hadn't slept all night. Get out. William issued the eviction order. John, let's leave together. William grabbed my wrist. Forget it, Rose, I'll go back first. You talk to your brother. After John left, William still held onto my wrist, showing no sign of letting go. Let go. I pried his hand open, stepping back to a more appropriate distance. Want to marry him? He hung his head, and I couldn't see his expression clearly. Yes. William pulled out a cigarette, lit it, and the spark condensed into a small dot. This was the first time he smoked in front of me. So, does your brother disagree? I took the opportunity to provoke him with my words. His knuckles began to tremble. Rose, don't call me brother. Then what should I call you? I deliberately provoked him, watching him on the verge of collapse. I looked at him on the verge of collapse, casually flicked away the still unburned cigarette butt, and leaned in for a kiss. The tip of my tongue that had just sipped the cigarette but still carried a hint of tobacco, ravaging freely in my mouth, wishing I could swallow it directly, curling up and nearly extinguishing it. William didn't smell of alcohol, he was sober. When we separated, his lips were somewhat swollen, and I didn't think I was doing much better at this point. What was that for? I raised an eyebrow, waiting for his reply. William's fingers were still trembling, as were his eyebrows and the corners of his eyes. Every inch of his body was trembling because of the kiss just now. Brother, do I need to remind you again? You have a girlfriend, and I have a boyfriend too. As the words came out, I suddenly realized that my tone was damn similar to William's. Rose, I'll say it again, don't call me brother, otherwise, what? Otherwise, his hand caressed my neck, and I didn't know what would happen next. He had forgotten that I was no longer the girl who would collapse in his arms and cry painfully at the mention of a death sentence. My fingers traced the curve of his neck, and I leaned close to his ear, calling out softly, "Brother, brother." The next morning, I woke up in William's embrace. As I opened my eyes, he was gazing at me intently. "What are you looking at?" I asked. "I wanted to see if you'd show any signs of regret." I stretched lazily and leaned back into his arms. "Well, you'll be disappointed then," I quipped. He chuckled but remained silent. "Besides, maybe it's you who should be regretting," he teased. "Remember Ashley, the sweet girl you tricked?" "Oh, you remember her name. Looks like someone's feeling a bit jealous." His expression was intriguing. It finally dawned on me that I might have fallen for his tricks again, and Ashley was probably just another actress he had brought in to provoke me. "Angry?" he asked. "No," I replied. William hugged me tightly. "I told you, I'm not looking for a girlfriend." "Well, what am I then?" I inquired. He ran his hand over my lips that he had nibbled on numerous times the night before, his expression sincere. "You are my lover," and another night of revelry ensued. "Do you also know that John was just another actor I hired?" I questioned. He raised an eyebrow and chuckled disdainfully, mocking my previous poor acting skills. Ignoring him, I turned away and continued, "Seriously, what if I decide to marry John? After all, my anger and departure that night were not feigned." "I know," he said, his smile fading. He leaned in and kissed the corner of my lips. "That's why I'm grateful." "Grateful for what?" "Grateful that it was him you walked in holding hands with." "Would you believe in someone else then?" I questioned. He did not deny it. "And if the person I bring isn't John, what then?" I persisted. Like a child asking for candy, I was relentless in seeking an answer. Playing with the ends of my hair, William's eyes turned cold as he responded, "There won't be an if. But what if the person I bring isn't John?" I pressed on. "In that case, as you put on your sacred wedding gown, I will take your hand and place it in the hand of that person. I will wear the carefully crafted mask of deceit that I have prepared, even though every fiber of my being is screaming to take you away. I will stand in the hall, in a place where even the priest and God can see, and say, 'I do to you.'" William's side story. William has no sentimental attachment to the Addams family, nor does he have any expectations that his mother's early death did not affect him much, as he had long known that his mother had another man outside. So when his father remarried less than 5 months after his mother's death, he was not surprised at all. Marriage was always absurd and ridiculous to him. He had only one request: to move out, to leave the Addams family, to get away from this filthy place. He was 18 that year. He didn't know how many years had passed when his father, who had never called him before, contacted him and told him that his stepmother was bringing a daughter and asked him to come back and take a look. Before William could refuse, the old man hung up the phone. Though angry, William drove to the Addams family that day. The girl was dirty, her whole body filled with a smell that didn't belong in that environment, her 2 braids tied unevenly, probably due to malnutrition, and her hair was yellowish in color. "Brother," she called shyly, forced by her mother. William didn't have much affection for the stepmother's daughter and casually remarked, "Where did the smelly little devil come from?" The girl was not tall, just reaching his waist. William could clearly see the displeasure in her eyes because of his comment. He ignored her and treated her as a passing guest in his life, not worth getting involved with. At that time, William did not know that his life with Rose was never meant to be straightforward from the beginning. 3 years later, the old man and that woman died in a car accident. William had to return to the Addams family to deal with the mess left behind. After sorting out the bunch of idlers at the Addams family, he suddenly discovered that the old man had left him with an even bigger problem. The girl brought by the stepmother had tears in her beautiful eyes. William vowed that he comforted Rose solely because she cried so unattractively at the time that it was embarrassing to see, making Addams' family look bad. But he forgot that Rose was not a member of the Addams family. Later, everything seemed to fall into place naturally as he brought Rose home. It wasn't as troublesome as he had imagined. Rose was much more sensible than she appeared. And her arrival even made William experience the feeling of having a home for the first time. Of course, this was disregarding her abysmal grades. Counseling high school kids wasn't too difficult for William, considering he was a distinguished graduate of a prestigious university himself. But unfortunately, Rose wasn't just an ordinary high school kid. As William repeatedly saw Rose making the same mistakes on similar types of problems, he started to suspect whether Rose was sent by fate to punish him. One day, Rose teased him, saying that he would have a hard time finding a wife if he continued to be so harsh. William had heard comments about marriage before, but this time it felt different coming from Rose. He seriously pondered this in his mind and then told her he wouldn't have a girlfriend. Later, feigning drowsiness, he secretly glanced at Rose, who was still working on her problems. The warm light illuminated her face. It would be fine to continue like this. William was startled by his own thoughts. It was the first time he realized that his feelings for Rose might not be so pure. After that, he secretly concealed his unworthy thoughts. He determined that he wouldn't and couldn't get further involved with Rose in this lifetime. She deserved a normal love affair. However, what William didn't expect was that he overestimated his own patience. When he saw Rose standing with a boy of her age whom he didn't know, for the first time in 27 years, his calm heart stirred turbulence. Later, he learned from Rose that the boy's name was John, someone she had liked. How enviable that word was, someone Rose had liked. William had to admit, he was insanely jealous. For 4 years in college, he hadn't told her that he had bought a house near her school. He had been watching her for 4 years in secret. At that time, William thought, if in these 4 years Rose had a boyfriend, he would honestly step back to his original place and not take one step further. Perhaps the heavens heard his plea, as Rose had been single for 4 years. So, he launched his assault. Whether it was by coercion or deception, he finally heard the phrase he had longed for from her, "William, I like you. Don't tell me you don't know." How could I not know? I have always known.